The Xbox Series XS is 4 years old and it's built a huge library of great games. With so much to choose from, we've curated a selection of the very best Xbox Series XS games to play right now. And we regularly review these choices to make sure we stand by them as the best the Xbox Series XS has to offer. So this still stands as our highest recommendations on the console. The future of Xbox is a more expansive brand than just a console, encompassing its suite of services like Xbox Game Pass. The subscription service has emerged as a major pillar for Microsoft, as it offers a huge rotating library of free games, including first-party releases. Whether you're looking for something new to play via the Game Pass subscription service or need buying advice for your next full game purchase, this list of games will steer you in the right direction. Prince of Persia is known for being a precise and influential platformer series, but this latest entry makes it feel right at home in the Metroidvania genre. The new direction fits the series like a glove, allowing Ubisoft to combine exploring a wide and varied map with series' favourite elements like precise platforming and tough combat challenges. Breaking with tradition, you don't play as the prince himself, but rather a member of his royal guard dispatched to save him from a betrayal within your ranks. The story that follows takes a few narrative shortcuts and can feel muddy, but it hints at a well-realized world full of mystery and magic. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is one of the best new Metroidvania games in years, and will likely serve as a template for others to follow. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a gorgeous platformer from Moon Studios that truly benefits from the power of the Xbox Series X. The stirring sequel runs in 4K at 120 FPS and supports HDR. Since Ori and the Will of the Wisps is filled with evocative, colourful settings and fast-paced platforming sequences, the boost in performance makes the already stellar experience even better. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is more of an action platformer than its predecessor and introduces a number of new moves to employ in combat against enemies both big and small. The sprawling map is deftly designed to force you to make full use of Ori's expanded arsenal, which creates a more dynamic and satisfying adventure. If you haven't played Ori and the Blind Forest, you should play that first to get the full emotional weight of the understated but profound tale. Both games are available in the Xbox Game Pass library. No Man's Sky, much like Sea of Thieves, has improved mightily since launch. Over the years, developer Hello Games has released steady and substantial updates that have brought the space exploration game closer to its original, ambitious vision. No Man's Sky now features far more tangible activities, including base building and even racing vehicles across tracks in multiplayer. No Man's Sky's next-gen update allows the game to run in 4K at 60 FPS. The performance enhancements also extend to lighting and shadows, which makes each of the randomly generated planets look even more detailed and alive. No Man's Sky is on Xbox Game Pass, so subscribers should absolutely check it out to see if they enjoy its loop. Already one of the best fighting games in recent memory, Mortal Kombat 11 is even more impressive on the powerful Xbox Series X hardware. Featuring 4K resolution and new visual flourishes, the gruesome action on screen is rendered in a ridiculous amount of detail. The base game already had an ample amount of content, including multiple single-player modes and competitive multiplayer. The Ultimate Edition tosses in the Aftermath story expansion and combat packs, including 12 additional fighters. Mortal Kombat 11 is one of those rare fighting games that balances solo and multiplayer content well, and it's also the type of fighter that's appealing to both casual players and die-hard fans alike. One of the most creative platforming games over the last several years, and one that manages to do that while requiring cooperative play. It Takes Two improves on Hazelight's previous game, A Way Out, in virtually every way. The whimsical gameplay is combined with a surprisingly dark story involving a couple divorcing, all while their daughter aims to keep them together through the power of imagination. The many gameplay mechanics could have felt overwhelming, but they're polished to a bright sheen that makes discovering the next one a joy. And with a buddy pass system included, only one of the people playing needs to own the game. Given the prowess of IO Interactive's first two entries in the World of Assassination trilogy, it's not really a surprise that Hitman 3 was an exceedingly good conclusion to Agent 47's latest arc. That said, Hitman 3 expanded on the foundation of its predecessors in some surprising ways. The game has since rebranded as World of Assassination, encompassing the full trilogy with added features. New spins on the loop, including a delightful murder mystery level, make Hitman World of Assassination feel fresh and inventive too. In addition to tremendous level design and choice-driven gameplay, Hitman 3 does a better job of focusing on its story and the many lively NPCs that inhabit the sandbox-style levels. This is Hitman at its finest, though you should definitely play the entirety of the World of Assassination trilogy. You can also import the levels from Hitman and Hitman 2 and play them in one place with enhancements. The latest addition, the roguelike mode Freelancer, makes an already excellent game even better. After making its name on spooky games like Ghostwire Tokyo and The Evil Within, Tango Gameworks surprised players with this bright and colourful rhythm action game. Hi-Fi Rush stars Chai, a lovable loser who accidentally gets his MP3 player embedded in his chest during a cybernetic surgery, which also granted him a robotic limb. What follows is a character action game in the model of a Devil May Cry, but set to catchy tunes. The animated art style is particularly a standout, taking a cel-shaded look to a whole new level and blurring the line between cinematics and gameplay. Halo the Master Chief Collection has been around since 2014, but Microsoft and 343 have slowly built it into a living monument to its most iconic franchise. Now, not only does the MCC encompass the original 3 Halo games and a suite of multiplayer options that spans the entire series' history, but also includes Halo 3 Odds, Halo 4 and the highly regarded Halo Reach. Altogether, it's an incredible homage to one of gaming's most storied franchises. Unlike many roguelikes, Hades uses its structure to its narrative advantage. This starts with the protagonist Zagreus, who happens to be the god of rebirth. Played from an isometric perspective, Hades Loop sees you running through procedurally generated rooms filled with increasingly challenging enemies. The fast-paced action gameplay is an absolute joy, and it has some serious legs thanks to a plethora of different builds, including wildly different weapon playstyles and abilities. Much of the storytelling is sandwiched between runs when you converse with other Greek gods and prepare for your next attempt to escape the underworld. Combining brilliant combat with top-notch writing, Hades is a must-play game even if you typically don't care for roguelikes. Obsidian has had a surprisingly quick output since being acquired by Microsoft, including dabbling in some unusual projects. Grounded isn't the most off the beaten track that the studio has ventured for that, see Pentiment below, but it's also not exactly what we would have expected from the studio most famous for games like The Outer Worlds. This is a sandbox survival game that takes place entirely in a suburban backyard, a la Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It spent some time in early access, but has since launched as a full release, challenging players to build their miniature survival camp and take on massive spiders and other threats, all while unfurling a surprisingly rich narrative. Playground Games is, hands down, the most consistent studio within the Xbox family, and the UK-based developer has been doing it for a decade without getting the recognition it deserves. The Forza Horizon 5 just happens to be the best game it's ever made, taking drivers to a gorgeous and environmentally diverse Mexico filled with races to complete, challenges to try out, and hundreds of cars to earn. What makes Forza Horizon 5 so wonderful is that it fully embraces the core pillar of every great open world game choice. Do succeed, you can essentially play the game however you want, whether that's taking part in cross-country marathons or just jumping all the danger signs you can find. There's no wrong way to play unless it's doing something you don't find fun, in which case there are probably 15 things within a mile of your location that you will find fun. From Software's Elden Ring is a masterpiece in open world game design. With an absolutely massive world teeming with secrets, scenic vistas, and an almost overwhelming amount of activities to complete, Elden Ring was the defining game of 2022. Now, the long-anticipated Shadow of the Erdtree expansion has been released, and it is once again an arresting and incredible action experience with seemingly boundless freedom to explore its massive landscape. Both the lore and the suite of gameplay opportunities have been greatly expanded, giving players new story details to explore and weapons to master. The combat is once again a challenge that will test even the most experienced Tarnished to hone their skills and explore the lands between. The long-running live service multiplayer game Destiny 2 has been going strong since 2017, but this may be among the best times in its entire history to jump in. After multiple expansions, Bungie has reached the final shape, the promised closing chapter of the story that has been building since launch, so you can now see how the story concludes its first saga and prepares for more to come. And with tons of past expansions, raids, cooperative play, PvP and the Crucible, you'll never run out of things to do and new power combos to test. Destiny 2 also runs in 4K at 60 FPS on Xbox Series X, and load times are drastically quicker than past generations where Destiny launched, which is a big deal for a game that has a decent number of loading screens. Dead Space spent years as a revered but dormant franchise, and a symbol of the types of games EA put out in the late aughts. This remake took what was great about the original and modernized it, not just in terms of visual style but with smart revisions. The result is a game that effectively introduces Dead Space's unique body horror style of action to a new generation of gamers. Slicing limbs off of necromorphs has never been so gross or felt so satisfying. When Control originally launched in 2019, it seemed to be too taxing for console hardware. The next-gen release of Control Ultimate Edition remedies these issues. On Xbox Series X, Control can run in 4K and it retains a steady 60 FPS. Alternatively, you can enable a graphics mode not available on Series S that runs at 30 FPS with ray tracing. Either option looks great, especially when making use of Jesse's powers. Control is a narrative-focused action game revolving around a mysterious government agency that investigates supernatural activity. With excellent and varied gameplay that feeds into the well-written tale, Control is one of the best action games in recent memory. This puzzler that uses its unassuming premise following the life of a small insectoid creature to tell a gripping story about life and self-evolution. The environmental puzzles revolve around carrying orbs to create some truly head-scratching scenarios, and it ultimately culminates in an experience that will engage your brain both for its puzzle mechanics and the sheer meaning of it all. While it might be a stretch to call Alan Wake underrated, it definitely didn't receive the massive audience that it deserved when it originally launched in 2010. Hopefully Alan Wake Remastered and the rousing success of its sequel will change that. The action-adventure game stars a thriller novelist whose wife disappears while they are on vacation. Things really start to get weird when plot points from a novel he doesn't remember writing start happening in real life. The remaster gives the wonderful written game a fresh look and adds some new secrets to uncover. It's worth playing whether you experience the original or not, and the gameplay holds up remarkably well. Remedy's Alan Wake is a cult classic of the survival horror genre, and since then the studio has been building its own universe with story ties to other releases like Control. Alan Wake 2 is the sequel 13 years in the making, and it delivers. The story follows the author Alan Wake and FBI agent Saga Anderson through a mind-bending duel campaign. It leans more into horror than its predecessor and contains some truly unforgettable moments. Yakuza Like a Dragon released as a launch title for Xbox Series X with better performance, including options for native 4K or a solid 60 FPS at a slightly lower resolution, and these visual enhancements make Like a Dragon's world more vibrant and detailed. Sega has never been afraid to take risks with the quirky and moving Yakuza franchise, and Like a Dragon takes the biggest risk in franchise history by moving away from beat-em-up combat in favor of a turn-based RPG system. The change funnels in from the personality of the new protagonist Ichiban Kasuga. Ichiban's mind often wanders, and he sees himself as a hero ripped out of Dragon Quest. This, in turn, shifts enemies into silly beings that are fought using an old-school turn-based system. Ichiban's personality is infectious, and the party-based system leads to some of the best interpersonal moments in franchise history. Yakuza Like a Dragon may play wildly differently than previous entries in the series, but it still has all of the heart and charm that have kept fans coming back for more. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine came out more than a decade ago, and fans of the action spectacle have been thirsting for a sequel ever since. It's finally arrived, and it's just what the Primarch ordered. The sequel adds refinements to make the combat feel more fluid than ever, as you crunch your way through hordes of orcs. It also makes excellent use of the Warhammer 40k license, building a world with a huge sense of scale, while remaining approachable for those who don't know a Purgator from a Justica. Resident Evil 4 was already considered one of the greatest action horror games of all time, and as a result it had been ported to other platforms countless times since release. After successful remakes of the previous games, expectations were set high for an RE4 remake, and Capcom delivered. This isn't just the best Resident Evil 4 has ever looked, it's also a beautifully refined take on the modern classic. It revises just enough to modernize and smooth out any rough edges while remaining utterly recognizable, and then builds new challenges on top of that to test even the most experienced players. It's a true testament to the enduring quality of Resident Evil 4. Remarkably, Psychonauts 2 is even better than its predecessor. After suffering multiple delays, Psychonauts 2 released over the summer to critical acclaim. The return to the psychic camp for kids was long overdue, and Double Fine made the most of this sequel. It retains the humor and charming storytelling of the original while refining the platforming gameplay and upping the psychedelic nature of the levels. From a gameplay perspective, Psychonauts 2 is a huge improvement over its predecessor, both when traversing the levels and fighting baddies in combat. Where Psychonauts 2 really shines, however, is in its portrayal of its characters, revolving around empathy and growth. Psychonauts 2 has an impactful message. It's easily one of Double Fine's best games, and you can play it on Xbox Game Pass.